Welcome you and thank you for coming to the Marriage Biblical Study of Marriage class. I really enjoy what Zach's vision is for these Roots classes. It's just to provide an opportunity, something other than your Sunday school class, to focus on a specific topic. And as you've seen, and there's some teenager topics, raising kids. Sherry's doing a Bible study, and we're going to do this marriage class. And hopefully as we go in the spring, we'll offer some other classes based on your feedback to these. So please let us know what you think of both the format, the duration, and what topics you'd be interested in. So we're really looking for feedback from everyone just on what our community, what our church's needs are, and we want to provide those type classes for you. So you should have a handout that has our schedule on it. We're going to go through a biblical look at marriage. And really, it's very practical. We did one session of this. We do talk about, some biblical reasons, but we really want to focus on very practical things. How do you argue in a marriage and fight fair? So we have a whole session on that. That's right. Communication is always important in a marriage. We're going to have a session on finances. Just if you don't have a kind of family-oriented financial picture where both of you are working together on your finances, we're going to give you some tools to look at how to do that within a family. And we also want to cover the topic of if you have divorce in your past, either yourself or your spouse. How do you build a strong biblical marriage today, regardless of whether this is your first, second, or subsequent marriage? So we want to make sure we meet the needs of everyone in your current marriage. So as you can see, kind of towards the end, we talk about divorce and if you have a blended family, maybe some special challenges that come with blended families. So you all should have this schedule, and we'll be kind of going over this the next 6 weeks or so, and I hope you really enjoy that. So to kind of kick this off, I wanted to just kind of show you a little bit maybe about what a marriage might be like. Okay. I don't have any sound here. Hold on a second.
We can create our own. Sometimes that's better.
The sound's the best part.
I think there's a few people here from the choir.
Let me see if I can do that again. All right, thank you. Let me try that one more time. This will set the stage for our class, so hopefully we'll get this working. There we go.
I did the choreography myself. Hey honey, have you gained some weight in your rear end? The dress you wear reminds me of my old girlfriend. And where'd you get those shoes? I think they're pretty lame. Would you stop talking, 'cause I'm trying to watch the game. If you're a man who wants to live a long and happy life, these are the things you don't say to your wife. I planned a hunting trip next week on your birthday. I didn't ask you, but I knew it'd be okay. Go make some dinner while I watch this fishing show. I taped it over our old wedding video. If you're a man who done it, a long and happy life, live on to solo. Okay. Your cooking is okay, but not like mother makes. The diamond in the ring I bought you is a fake. Your eyes look puffy, dear. Are you feeling ill? Happy anniversary, I bought who wants to know about getting happy love that you? It's all the things you do sincerely. You're a man who doesn't want to get killed with a knife. It's all the things you do sincerely.
Okay, so maybe that's not the proper way to start off your marriage, right? You may want to choose some other tactics than that. But that's just an example of why it's important that we need to study what really takes place in a marriage and what happens, how we are to relate to our spouse, what God intends for a marriage, and so we want to provide you some of those tools. In the handouts that you got, we're going to go through, kind of lecture through God's model for marriage, broken contracts and broken lives. So if you want to follow along as we're going through that one, at the end, we're actually going to have homework throughout the entire class. The other kind of 4-page handout that you have is a worksheet that is intended for you to work at home. We're not going to review it next week, so I think we do that on the third session, so you got a couple weeks to be working through that, but please look through the verses, read through those verses, and study that. We'll use that later on, and that kind of ties us in with what Scripture says about marriage. We kind of cover it here, but really it's intended for you to study it at home, discuss it with your spouse, and we'll review it a little bit later on in our class. But what we really want to talk about is really about 5 questions about marriage. First, what is marriage and what it's not? We want to understand why God created marriage, what's the biblical background about marriage, and why it's important for us as married couples to hold that in as high a regard as God instituted marriage. The second one we're going to talk about is what is love. There's such in today's society, love has taken on such different meanings. There's just one-night stand type of love, and there's just kind of going away from what God really intends to be a love relationship. Really as modeled between Him and us is the model that we are supposed to have between us and our spouse. What is fidelity? We're going to talk a little bit about that. What is the relationship between our Christian faith within our marriage? And what is the overall goal of our life together? If your marriage, you're going in separate directions, it's going to be really hard to have a marriage based on your two lives that are diverging. And so want to give you some thoughts and ideas about having a common vision and a common goal for your family, and that translates into building a strong marriage. So the first thing about misconceptions about marriage, marriage is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to make you holy. If you think about when God created man and woman was created to complement or to complete that man. Genesis doesn't really say anything about the wife was created to make the man happy. We have such a misconception that if now, when you're in love and you get engaged and you get married, everything's wonderful, exciting, and you're having fun and you're happy. What happens 5 years down the road, 10 or 20, and it's not as fun as it used to be. Well, it's a misconception that we think our spouse is there to just make us happy, and that's not the case. In fact, I think Dennis even said it a few weeks ago in service. God often pairs us with someone that's very different than us in order to challenge us in the areas that we're weak. That's certainly the case with Tanya and I. I mean, there's parts that she's very different than I am, and rather than use that as a division between us, it's something that I let her be different and handle the things that she's good at, and I handle the things that I'm good at. And so it's a way for one person to be completed with another person that has just different skills and abilities and thoughts and emotions. And so along with that, there's going to be times where you conflict, right? And because you're two different people. And so knowing that marriage is designed to complete us and to make us whole in the image of God is really God's purpose for the institution of marriage. And that's one thing that if you think about it, just changing your attitude to where I'm not necessarily going to look for my wife to make me happy all the time really takes a lot of pressure off of her and off of the marriage. If you're willing to work through some of the tough times and see that as God making you as a family unit holy and able to raise a family. The second thing, a major misconception is that a marriage is me-focused. The issue and the issue of don't tell me what to do. So you have no accountability to anyone else. When you get married and you go from single to married, you voluntarily give up some of those rights. You're not a me only. You're now living in a house with two people. It used to be only you making decisions and deciding when and where you go. But that's part of marriage, is giving up some of that independence. And that's something that we need to accept as just part of being in a marriage. And the third thing is that there are things that creep into our thinking as we go through life. Expectations of our spouse that are unfair, but shaped by the world, and all we do is live in discontentment and begin resenting our spouse. And there's a couple examples there. Knowing that things are going to change. As time goes on and we lose that kind of excitement about our new marriage, and we get into thinking, yes, sir.
What was the second word? And begin?
Resenting our spouse. We begin resenting our spouse. So as the honeymoon period wears off, and you're kind of in the daily grind, and then throw kids into the mix with schedules and stresses, it's very easy to become discontent with what we thought was going to be that perfect marriage, or we had hoped it would go a certain direction, and just because of life circumstances, they tend to go somewhere else. We have to really keep from becoming discontent or resenting the spouse as the one who's causing that problem. Or, if I was still single, I could be doing this. But now that I'm married, I'm trapped, or I'm tied in with doing these other things. So we have to really be careful about allowing discontentment and resentfulness to enter into the marriage, because those are some of the quickest ways to really kill a marriage. So the model here is that we need to develop right thinking, which in turn affects our right feelings, which affects our right actions. So it starts with how we think about the marriage. It's going to be really hard to act. In fact, some people can probably carry on an act of being happy in their marriage for a little time, for a little while. But if you're not thinking right and you're building up resentment, that's going to come out in your marriage. It's probably not going to come out in a nice way either. It'll probably be some snide remarks from time to time until it just builds, continues to build. So we have to understand and change our thinking in order that we can feel the correct way about our spouse, and therefore that we can act in the proper way towards our spouse. In fact, Deuteronomy 6:5 says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength." And Matthew 22:37 says, "Love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and all your mind." It requires the right thinking in order for us to overcome the daily stresses of our marriage.